can live in the present within us. John B. Russwurm, 1799 to 1851, born Jamaica. Editor, publisher, and politician. He was the second African to graduate from Bowdoin College. Along with Samuel Cornish, he co-founded two African American newspapers, Freedom's Journal and the Negro Press. Mr. Russwurm also served as governor of Maryland Colony at Cape Palmas. Later in life, he moved to Liberia, Africa, where he served as superintendent of the Liberian school system. He also published the Liberia Herald. Benjamin Singleton, 1809 to 1892, born Tennessee. Organizer, carpenter, and farmer. Known as Pap, he led about 300 Africans to Kansas, where they founded Singleton County. He helped to organize the great African American Exodus of 1879. William Still, 1821 to 1902, born New Jersey. Mr. Still was born into slavery, but was purchased by his father. He lived a life dedicated to the freeing of other enslaved Africans. Mr. Still served as secretary of the Philadelphia Vigilance Committee of the Underground Railroad. He was also a conductor, which meant he personally went into the South to lead Africans north. A meticulous record keeper, he documented the activities of the Underground Railroad in his book, The Underground Railroad, in 1876. George W. Williams, 1849 to 1891, born Bedford Springs, Pennsylvania. Minister, historian, lawyer, politician, and editor. Mr. Williams served on the Ohio legislature and minister to Haiti. In 1883, he wrote The History of the Negro, a history of African Americans from 1619 to 1880. This is an encyclopedic 2-volume work, one of the first written by an African American. Elijah Muhammad, 1897-1975, born Sandersville, Georgia. Author, religious leader, co-founder of the Nation of Islam. He also published a weekly newspaper, Muhammad Speaks. He was a major reformer of incarcerated African American males. Joel Augustus Rogers, 1880 to 1966, born Jamaica. Historian, writer, journalist, lecturer, and war correspondent. Mr. Rogers was a self-taught historian. He wrote several books, including Nature Knows No Color Line and Sex and Race. He traveled worldwide to research and collect information for his books. He also was a major influence on a young John H. Clark. Henry Bibb, 1815 to 1854, educator, abolitionist, editor. Mr. Bibb escaped from slavery and helped to free other enslaved Africans. He edited a newspaper called The Voice of Freedom and wrote his autobiography recounting his days as an anti-slavery agent. Richard Benjamin Moore, 1893 to 1976, born Hastings, Barbados, historian, lecturer, author, educator, and political activist. Mr. Moore helped to set the tone for Harlem's intelligentsia of his day. He led a Harlem study group in which John Henrik Clark was a member. Eric Eustace Williams, 1911 to 1981, born Port of Spain, Trinidad, Prime Minister, historian, lecturer, and author. Mr. Williams founded the People's National Movement in Trinidad. He also served as Prime Minister of Trinidad. Fanny Barker Williams, 1855 to 1944. Lecturer, educator, and civic leader. A staunch advocate for the rights of African American women, she participated in the National Colored Women's Congress and co-founded the first training school for African American nurses. Mary McLeod Bethune, 1875 to 1955, born Maysville, South Carolina, educator and activist. Mrs. Bethune was an intense and serious educator of African American youth. She founded the Daytona Normal and Industrial Institute for Negro Girls, which became Bethune-Cookman College. She also founded the National Council of Negro Women in 1935. She was also a member of the National Business League and the National Urban League. Septima Poinsett Clark, 1898-1987, born Charleston, South Carolina, educator and activist. Mrs. Clark began to teach school soon after she graduated from high school at age 18. She continued to educate herself as she taught. She traveled over the South, educating black youth. Some of the states in which she taught were Mississippi, Alabama, North and South Carolina, as well as Tennessee. Mrs. Clark was also an intense political organizer who demanded that her students also become politically organized. Frances Ellen Watkins Harper, 1825 to 1911, born Baltimore, Maryland, educator and anti-slavery activist. Mrs. Harper was one of the most prolific women writers of her day. She was a member of the Underground Railroad, a brilliant anti-slavery lecturer, and an intense political activist. She attended the prestigious William Watkins Academy for Negro Youth, where she was known to be an outstanding and brilliant student. Lucy Craft Lane, 1854 to 1933, born Macon, Georgia. Mrs. Lane was born into enslavement. Her father was able to buy himself as well as the family's freedom. With the help of her master's sister, the little Lucy not only learned to read and write, but also to attend Atlanta University. She graduated the university at 19. She was one of the first women to receive a degree from Atlanta University, where she was known as a brilliant student. Charlotte Fortin Grimke, born Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, anti-slavery activist, educator, poet, and author. Charlotte Fortin Grimke was the granddaughter of James Fortin, a wealthy sailmaker and abolitionist. Her parents, Robert Bridges Fortin and Mary Woods Fortin, were also community activists and organizers. They did not leave the education of their daughter to chance, and they had the money to send her to good schools. She was an avid reader and was known as an excellent debater. Mrs. Grimke's life is the perfect example of a socially, politically active, intellectually sharp family woman who is also devoted to service to black people.
George Padmore, 1902-1959, born Aruca District, Tacarigua, Trinidad. Reporter, lecturer, journalist, African nationalist, and author. George Padmore was his pen name. Mr. Padmore's real name was Malcolm Ivan Meredith Nurse. Mr. Padmore met Kwame Nkrumah, the future president of Ghana, in London, and both men became close friends. Henry Sylvester Williams, 1869 to 1911, born in Trinidad. Lawyer, worldwide organizer for Pan-Africanism. H. Sylvester Williams organized the first Pan-Africanist Congress of 1900 in London. He was a major influence on almost every Pan-Africanist of his day. Prince Hall, 1735 to 1807, born in Barbados. Mr. Hall was an officer in the United States Revolutionary War. After the war, he began to create Masonic institutions for African Americans. He founded the first Masonic lodges for African Americans. Brother Hall did this on March 6, 1775, in Boston Harbor with a British charter. He also chartered the African Lodge number 459 and the African Grand Lodge in 1791. James Fortin, 1766, 1842. Born Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Abolitionist, inventor, and businessman. Mr. Fortin had a very successful sail-making business in Philadelphia. He was one of the primary organizers of the Convention of Free Negroes in 1830. Josephine St. Pierre Ruffin, 18